Welcome to the Speak Like a Leader podcast with John Bates. Welcome to the show. With me today, I have someone who is a photojournalist travel writer for the U.S. military community. She travels all over the world. She speaks to entrepreneurs. She addresses issues like spouses working when they're, being transferred from base to base. She promotes small businesses around the world because of her travel writing. And she's someone who's just delightful. And we're going to have, I think, a really awesome conversation that'll be insightful and valuable. Welcome, Wendy Payne.
Thanks, John. That was such a wonderful opening.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to talk. And, so just so that so I don't forget, if you want to find Wendy, just type in travelwithwendy.net, travelwithwendy.net. And she's got a YouTube channel. She's got videos for you. She's got she does free courses online sometimes.
My podcast is called Talking Travel with Wendy.
Talking Travel with Wendy. So
found on every channel.
There you go. Every podcast outlet, just like hopefully mine. So where you find this one, you can find hers. And she's got a travel personality quiz. So all kinds of fun stuff. And Wendy, here's the angle that I want to start with. One of the things that I grew up in the military. I never enlisted. Okay. I wanted, this just speaks to how spoiled I was, but I wanted to fly, wanted to fly close air ground support for the Marine Corps is what I wanted to do. And they wouldn't let me fly at that time because I had one eye was slightly, out. I had a little bit of astigmatism. Yeah. So instead of enlisting, I ran away with my rock band instead. So,
okay. All right.
I was 19, whatever.
Equally important. So I have a musician son. I get it.
There you go. But one of the things that I love is I did grow up in the military, and I love hanging out with military people because one of the things that I think they get as just like whether they like it or not is this ability to just show up in a new place, make friends right away, jump into life and just keep going. And then 2 years later, pick up stakes, go someplace else, start it all over again and be okay with it. Right.
Yes.
So that is an unbelievably valuable skill. And one of the things that I also did when I was young, one of my crazy decisions was after college, I took off for a year plus so first of all, we spent a year together in the car, my best friend, Matt and I, selling t-shirts out of the back of the car and trying to save money. Yeah. And then we went to Southeast Asia and surfed for like almost a year. And, we'd saved up enough money that in a place like that, the dollar was strong enough that we didn't even have to work. We had nothing to do every day. And it was fabulous. And I think that those moments of travel and things like being a military spouse or being in the military and having to just be ready at a moment's notice to go live someplace else. And I think that there's just so much that travel can teach us, high level executive, entrepreneur, loves to travel, doesn't like to travel, whatever. I just think it's so valuable.
Absolutely. I believe it opens your mind and your heart, and you start to find out that there's this connection of people, which is one of my main missions, is to help people connect. But when you travel, you find out that people are similar and different. They might have different customs, but the similar things that we all share that ties us is we want the best for our families. We want a nice living. We want to be able to travel and meet other people. And so, we've had that opportunity with the military for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Right.
19 moves in 27 years. So
wow. So, and your husband was active duty in the Army for about 22 years. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
And he's been a civilian now for about 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a little sigh there, Wendy. What?
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, we've actually moved more since he's been a civilian than when,
Yeah.
when he was active duty. That's not true. I'm
Yeah.
exaggerating, but it feels
Okay.
like it. I'm
Yeah.
older now.
There you go. Yeah. It does get a little tougher.
Yeah. But the resiliency of the military families are just absolutely impressive. And like you were saying, that I have spoken to many groups across the world about how the adaptability that you have to change and accept. I was 9 months pregnant with my second child, and my husband was deployed, and I met my neighbors across the street who watched my baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
After we'd only moved for a week. I only knew them for a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they watched my young daughter while I went to the hospital, and he was able to come back for the birth. But so it's you learn to trust very quickly.
Yeah.
And these are things that, might make some people unnerved, but when you're living this life, you know that you're going to trust them. And sometimes those people become lifelong friends.
Lifelong friends. Well, there's two things to that come up for me. One is that I talk all the time about the neurobiology of human communication. And depending on what scientist you want to listen to on the day, something like 95 to 98% of everything is unconscious anyway. We have a very small amount of things that are actually conscious, like what we say, but all the messages, so much of that is unconscious. And I think that's one of the things that I know that there's a program in the Marine Corps teaching this now, but I think it's one of the things that the military has always been good at is gut feelings, right? You trust your gut. And that comes from all of that unconscious information that we're picking up on all the time.
Absolutely.
So I think people you just get put into a situation where you got to trust your gut,
right.
And you say, okay, I feel good about these people or I don't. And you go with it because you don't really have time to vet these things deeply. Right?
Absolutely. It's what faith looks like too. You've got to trust without seeing and without knowing. You've got to trust.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so there's all that unconscious stuff. And then there's the fact that as human beings, one of the things that really, I think, differentiates us, I think Simon Sinek talks about this in his book, Start With Why, is that we develop the capacity to take care of each other to the level that people would actually go away to war or go away on a long hunting trip and trust that the village would take care of their families and everything would be okay when they got back, right? Because we did that for each other, and we've done that for ages and ages,
Absolutely.
And it is pretty inspiring to me, that because I think it's a pretty good point, we would have never taken these risks and developed the things we did and discovered the things we did if we couldn't trust our community, right?
Absolutely. And I just came back literally yesterday, as you know, from a cross-country trip, and I am enamored with the American resiliency that I saw. And
tell us about that, boy. We could use some stories about that. Let's hear. Yeah,
absolutely incredible. So one of them is we stopped in a Pueblo B&B just a bed and breakfast in Santa Fe. And it's a 160-year-old Pueblo. And this has been in the same family for almost 100 years. In the last 36 years, it's been this husband and wife team. And, after having a year of COVID, travel really took a hit.
Oh, boy.
So I think it, was definitely fate and planning, but I was supposed to go to Germany in June, and Germany said no.
Yeah, right. Nope, not letting you in here.
So my daughter is still there. She's in Germany. So I was going to go and see her. So when they said no, I decided, okay, I'm going to plan a trip to Denver, Colorado. Well, I live in Alabama, and a round trip ticket from Huntsville to Denver was $1,000.
Yeah, I haven't had to fly recently, so that's
well, it costs more for me to go to Denver than Germany. I thought this is really crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
So I just said, I've got a little hybrid car. I have enough family and military family. We call them family.
Family. There you go.
So I just started calling people, and the magic of Facebook, and reached out and said, "Hey, anybody want to put me up for a night or two? And I'd love to see you and stuff." So so I did that all the way to Denver, where I visited a friend, and then Vail, one of my high school friends. And along the way, I stayed in Airbnbs or small bed and breakfasts, and tried to give back to local communities, and got a lot of, I met so many really wonderful people, and had very few hiccups along the way.
Yeah. Which is nice. I mean, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Certainly it's all been upended over the last 18 months.
Yes. So in Arkansas, which was really unique. I've never been to Arkansas. So
there you go. First time for everything.
I had Googled this. Arkansas has a Grand Canyon, and you can pretty much find a blogger who's written about everything. And I found a blogger who'd written about Arkansas's Grand Canyon. And so I thought, okay, that's on my route. I can do it. And I'm a hiker, and it sounds like it's doable. And it's really just an overlook. It's a spot, and it's okay, but it's kind of like south of the border in South Carolina. It's prettier than that. But we ended up.
So it's kind of not quite a Grand Canyon. It's kind of an okay canyon.
It's kind of like a big valley, but it's okay.
Okay.
The people who owned the spot, it was very, very pretty. It was very pretty, but just not what I was expecting.
Right.
And, but the bed and breakfast that we stayed at was absolutely enchanting. And it was called the Azalea Falls Inn, and Kathy runs that with her husband. And, she recommended that we go to this restaurant it took about 20 minutes to get to because of the winding mountain roads.
Okay, cool.
And it's very unassuming. It was called the Low Gap Cafe, and it seemed like it was, pretty country. And I'm living in Alabama now, so I know country.
So there you go.
Are awesome.
Right on.
And we get there, and it turns out that the chef is a New York City, Denver trained, Santa Monica or California, moved to Arkansas on this mountain, and has this, looks like a motorcycle cafe.
Right.
Low Gap Cafe. And so I was able to have, I've been trying to do vegetarian. So I was able to have this vegetarian primavera with a white wine reduction lemon sauce.
Wow.
In the middle of this, you'd think it was just like a biker bar.
Yeah.
And I met the most hardworking server, I think, in my 29 years in hospitality. She was working her little tail off. And of course, she shared with us that, just local restaurants are struggling right now because of the people aren't going back to work. Yeah. And so some of them are closing. And so my heart was just really opened up, because as we were driving along, then I started noticing help wanted signs along the way. And people were saying, please be patient with us. Don't give us a bad review on Google. We're going through COVID pains. And so that really, that was actually then, the rest of our journey, I was very aware of seeing those signs and knowing the struggles of the small business owner. So,
well, one of the things I've been saying for a long time, and I'll even though we're just audio here, I'll hold up my sticker.
Oh yeah.
It says, in the same storm, but not in the same boat.
Amen.
And I just think that I think that there's certainly a lot of reasons to be disappointed with humanity out of this whole thing, but there are also many reasons, if you look for them, I think, to be inspired. And it's such an opportunity for renewed compassion,
Absolutely.
And I think that, anywhere but national news and Twitter, there's probably more of that than we realize. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Truly in this, the one-on-one connection, which really is what it is all about. And Facebook and Twitter and all those social media platforms, that cannot take the place of this, the one-to-one connection, and the eye-to-eye contact, and the compassion, like you said, when you hear a story and you hear their story of what they're going through, that can't be replaced with this on the computer.
You know, type. Yeah.
Type.
It sounds like a pretty heart-opening trip for you, this last one.
Yeah.
Well, so what are some of the things that you think are, so, you know, people that are listening, they may be running, you know, a high level executive listening to this on the way into work, you know, in the midst of like having zero time for anything. It might be an entrepreneur running a company at a startup, or, you know, running a small business somewhere. What are some of the key lessons that you could share with those folks from your experience paying so much attention to the entrepreneurial military spouses, and from travel, just from your whole world? I think you've got some great lessons. What would some of those be?
I think first, John, is hang in there. You know, don't.
Well, amen, sister. I'll say that. Yeah.
You know, hang in there. I mean, my parents were just great teachers on there's hills and valleys in every journey, you know, and sometimes you're at the mountain peak and sometimes you're, you know, down in the muddy water. But surround yourself with people who not necessarily are smarter than you, but as smart as you, maybe, but who also have a shared vision of sustaining, of being supportive of what you're doing, and you being supportive of what they're doing. I think we need to get back to listening. And,
oh boy,
you know, I struggle with that myself. I'm a huge talker. Obviously, you can tell. I hardly take an inhale. I have friends.
Well,
that
you
tell
are
me that.
you are good at it. You are good at it, Wendy.
But really listening and hearing. That's two. Listening, I've learned, and hearing are two separate things. And so sometimes when you're having conversations with people, also listen to the tone of their voice. You know, because they might be saying something, but their tone or their eye or their body language are saying something totally different, especially now, because I've discovered, even on this journey, this last one, we hide things. And when you stop and you give eye contact and you say, but no, really, how are you doing? People will share and they want to tell their story. So I would say, if you are a high-level executive or someone who is in charge of management, that might just be frustrated with why aren't people showing up. I'm hoping that people do. I heard some really shocking stories of having to pay people to show up for interviews, which, wow, we've gotten there.
Wow.
Hang in there. There are really good people in America that do want to work, that want to contribute, make a difference in society. If you are a small entrepreneur and you're just starting out, which, by the way, I've met quite a few this year, I would say hang in there. Maybe taper back. Take a look at what's working, what's not working. Maybe focus on just what's working right now, or what's bringing in just a little bit of cash. If you've got an Etsy store, or you've got a craft that you've been working on and you notice that one particular item sells more than another, or t-shirts for, women drinking wine. I'm just hypothetically throwing that out.
Yeah. Not that you know anything about that.
I don't know anything about that. Yeah. Then, maybe do a little bit more of that if you need that. Also, don't be afraid to reach out for encouragement. This is one thing that I have talked to my friends group about, my military people. I've even had them say, Wendy, weren't you a little intimidated about asking family and friends if you could stay over? Well, no, I'm double vaccinated, for one.
Yeah.
And two, I think people are very eager to connect with family and friends right now. So reach out to them and say, hey, could you use a visit? Would you like me? Or call a bed and breakfast or an Airbnb and see what their requirements are to spend the night or stay. If you're making reservations at a restaurant, you can ask for it really specific now. And the restaurateurs really want to work with you. So you can say, I want to eat outside, or can I pick up my dinner here? Or I'm okay with having a small group, but do you have a separate room set aside?
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. I mean, I think it's all about people's personal management of risk. And I think what I think is a great idea that I'm hearing from you is to just ask for what you need,
Yeah.
And I really love, I love hang in there. That's definitely one of the absolute keys,
Remember that kitty poster?
Yep. I do. I totally do. With its claws just hanging in there. I mean, and there's so much in my coaching that number of things where the key to success with this, the access to success is 3 little words: hang in there, hang in there.
It's so cool.
Doing it. Right. And, and then, the other thing that I think is, this is something that I always talk about too. Listening, right? It's something everybody talks about. Oh, active listening. And, you need to be an active listener. And, and that's all fine and good. And I agree with it. And I didn't get it. I totally didn't get it. I thought I was doing active listening, but what I was actively listening to was the monkey in my head going, blah, 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 So, I think now more than ever, how can we listen to each other? And I do an exercise that, I call it the 3 levels of leadership listening. And on the first, we sit down and we pair people up, and someone will say something about something that mattered to them in the past week or two, right? Tell me a sentence or two, right? Really, really short. And then the goal is to be able to parrot it back word for word, just say it back to them word for word. Okay. That's already hard.
Yeah.
Wait, well, and when people do that, like they'll substitute a word here or there, or they won't, so, and when I'm doing it, I make sure that the person saying it says something short. I'll ask them to say it a couple times if I need to get it really short, because it's not a memory test, but it's still hard. So that's step 1. Step 2 is I ask people to listen for the emotional world that person is in. Not just, oh, you're happy, but like, well, you're happy. Sounds like you might be a little bit anxious too. And maybe there's a little bit of nostalgia, like for the present even. And you're almost sad about this, but you're really proud, to get that whole world of their emotion. And then the third level is to think about what would the person who said this, because in the first place, they chose to say this, right? They could have said any of almost an infinite number of things. But when I said, say something about anything that means something to you, has any meaning to you. Okay. They pulled this out. So that's the first clue, right? Because it could have been anything.
Right.
Then what's that world? So what would the person who said this and felt this, what would they be committed to?
Right.
And then to speak to them about what you believe they must be committed to, given what they chose to talk about and said and how they feel about it. And it's a fabulous exercise,
Yeah. I mean, because then you find out the motivation of why they chose that. And behind the motivation is the feelings. And so super cool.
So, and I've tried to take listening like that out into my life. And one of the things that I find is that people just don't get listened to that way very often.
It's true.
Somebody who really is listening for them, right? Versus just to what the words they're saying are, but actually listening and trying to get them. That's not the usual experience of life.
Oh, no. I mean, I'm still learning. And when I first started podcasting last year, I would listen to the podcast during editing, and I would say, I don't remember us talking about that. Well, it was because my head was already on to the next question.
Right. Yeah. That's a tough thing. That's a tough thing like that. That is one of the big things. And it's just because we care, right? If we want to be sweet to people and we want to like have a positive overlay, we just care about what other people think. And like, that's not so bad, right? It's kind of being self-aware, but then there's a place where that kind of self-awareness starts to really get in the way of what we're actually up to, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's been one of my practices for a long time, and I'm still practicing.
That's a good one, John.
Is to let go of listening to, and what happened for me was people got so much more interesting when I stopped listening to my own BS about everything that was going on. And I actually just really put that aside, didn't listen to it and listened to them.
Yeah.
Wow. People got so much more interesting, and I don't think they changed,
I know it was the listening that changed. Oh yeah. Because when you really pay attention, you find out they've traveled to this place and traveled to that place, or they've had this experience or that experience. And you're like, wow, I didn't know that.
Well, it's one of the things that makes me think it's so interesting what you do, right? Because you travel, and everybody loves to travel, right? And we all,
most people.
Oh, yeah, not everybody. It's true. But I mean, a lot of us love to travel and we love to be in these new places, but we don't have to write an article about it. We don't have to get to know the backstory. We don't have to find a little bit out about the stuff that we, but because you've got that photojournalist travel writer gene, you're digging into things and asking questions that maybe, hey, maybe I could ask those questions too, even if I didn't want to write an article about it, right?
Well, how I started was about 6 years ago in Germany. I was living in Stuttgart, Germany, which is down in the Black Forest. And
I love Stuttgart in the Black Forest.
Stuttgart. Ich liebe Stuttgart.
Meine Mutter kommt aus München, so bayerisch bin ich, gell?
Nee, wir wohnen in Bublingen.
Nochmal?
Ja, wir wohnen in Bublingen.
Bublingen? Kenn ich nicht. Es ist in der Nähe?
Ja, in der kleinen Stadt Erbach.
Erbach, schön.
Ja, in Magstadt.
In Magstadt. Kenne ich Magstadt?
Yeah. Erbach-Stubler was right there.
Oh, cool. My family really comes from Franken.
Ah, okay. So but I love that you speak German.
From.
My daughter is really, really fluid. I was when I was there. I immersed myself. But
well, so the military, say having a Pilsner helps.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my German is so good. My French is fantastic after wine. And Italy, I'm just... Although the last time I was in Italy, I have great friends in Piemonte. I was speaking Italian so much to her, and I was so proud of myself. And she said, Wendy, your Spanish is getting so good. And I
congratulations.
thought, I'm not even close.
That's so funny.
But I did have 4 years of Spanish, so in my defense.
There you go. Well, the
so
romance
similar.
Languages. Yeah, the romance.
But when we got over to Germany, I was actually only there for about 4 months, and my husband saw this mini micro job in the Military Times, and he said, hey, listen, they're hiring for a travel writer, and that might be something you're interested in because you have a degree in travel and tourism. And I've only used it somewhat. So I applied for the job and I started working for them. I did that for about 3 years. I worked for the Stuttgart Citizen and other papers around Europe, and then I started going to speak at different MWR and USO events and talk to spouses about getting out and about. One of the things that we were noticing with the military spouse community is that there's a lot of isolationism.
Yeah.
Because they get stationed over what they think is a 3-year vacation. But what happens most times is the service person is deployed. They're going to Afghanistan or Africa or Syria. Wherever we're sending them.
My mom says it really well, Wendy, I think, and it's a poignant note because she said, there we were stationed in paradise in Kaneohe on Hawaii, right? And then my dad got sent to Vietnam, and she said heaven turned into hell overnight.
Yes.
It's hard. It's really hard. There
Yeah,
you are in this beautiful place,
yeah.
knowing your loved one is in some place that is vastly different.
I know.
And how do you have such a great time, right? Like,
without them.
Yeah.
And so my job was to write articles of inspiration where they could possibly have connection with possibly other spouses that are going through the same thing.
Yeah.
And what started out very innocently, I had a wonderful, German class. We were learning German, and they said, I told my crew, hey, listen, I got this little micro job, and do you guys want to help me? I have to go to all these places around Stuttgart and write about them, the festivals, the restaurants, things for day trips for, because when the soldiers might be deployed somewhere locally, they'll come home for the weekend. And so then they can go out and have a family event, whatever. So I had a great core crew to help me explore around the Stuttgart area. And then as time went on, they said, would you consider taking us to France and Poland and Italy? And sure. Yeah. So then we started doing cooking classes in Italy and tasting champagne in France. And so I would only take 6 to 8 people, and we only stayed at small bed and breakfasts around Europe. And that's how it very innocently began, my small tour company. And then I started, doing these tours, connecting with small businesses, and then also speaking about it and writing about it. I am a huge proponent of, if you get information, you need to share it.
Yeah, I think that's good. Well, and if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, gosh, I think John and Wendy should collaborate and do like a leadership training, let's go through Europe and bed and breakfasts things, send me an email. And we'll consider it. Yeah.
Let's do it.
I think,
I would love it. I'm hoping to expand. We were supposed to go to New Zealand last February.
Yeah. Wow. I still haven't been to New Zealand. Love to go there.
So I have a good friend in the military who moved there forever in Christchurch. And so I'm supposed to go there to visit, but maybe next year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly there's been a little bit of a hiccup with all of that. Yeah. So what are some other things? Like, is there any other things that you've seen? 'Cause you've seen, I imagine you've seen military spouses in particular, 'cause it's kind of your focus, go from being stuck at home and unhappy and frustrated to being like, wow, hey, this is cool. I can do something. I'm contributing. I've started this little business. Maybe it's on Etsy. Maybe it's somewhere else. Is there a particular story that you can think of?
Well, I mean, oh my gosh, the creativity of our community is just amazing of what they can start. The really cool thing about military spouses is most of them are educated, at least with a bachelor's degree. You can also go to college and get a 2-year degree and work as a dental hygienist or, to get out. Most of the challenge, as I find, is with moving as much as we do, it is really hard to get a stability job that you would consider a standard job out in the workforce because people look at your resume and they see where you live. And even though they say there's no discrimination, I can tell you from personal experience, there are. Because as soon as they see that you're a military spouse, you're not going to be considered because they know you're going to be gone in 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is why so many of us decide, okay, I'm going to just make something for myself.
Be an entrepreneur. Look, I mean,
and be an entrepreneur.
I watched my dad at this large organization where he ran the legal department just get screwed, and I know my dad. I grew up with him, right? I've seen him in his good times and his bad times, and I know who that guy is. He's a very good guy. And he did a great job, and they just absolutely screwed him because he wouldn't let them do something that was highly unethical.
Yeah.
And at that point I was like, you know what? Like, zero interest in the corporate path. I just had zero interest. So in a way, the fact that military spouses have a much harder time getting a standard job, like that could be a cloud with silver lining,
I know.
And now,
I never considered it a hardship. I worked in the corporate world initially. I was at the Hyatt and the Marriott, and then I worked for a very large nonprofit in DC when I first started out.
Mm-hmm.
I liked those jobs, but I knew that there was a ceiling that I was never going to reach in those businesses. And so I guess, like I was telling you on the phone, I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur. I also have a background in culinary. So I had a catering business at one time, because another thing that military spouses do really well is we usually get our homes situated first things. Bedrooms, baths, and kitchens right away. And then after we get the kids situated in school and in medical, we have that all taken care of. It takes about 6 months for all of this. Then we want to carve out something for ourselves. And we start networking with friend groups. A lot of people engage in, they have spouse associations on post that help with volunteer coordinating. With all the systems that we have in place on every post needs help, whether it's childcare or at the hospital. Hospitals and clinics. So you can plug in and volunteer in a lot of places. And what's great now, after 20 years, is some employers are looking at that as actual work. And I've had a very successful friend who did a great job as a treasurer and a grant writer for a spouses club in Stuttgart. And she's now working for the University of Colorado Health System as a grant writer. And all of her work and her work ethic from working in this volunteer spouse totally has helped her with this job that she's working in the professional capacity now in Colorado.
Well, I just like to highlight that for a second, Wendy, because if she can do a good job as a volunteer and she can manage herself and get stuff done and do things, the way they're meant to be done, not getting paid. My suspicion is that if she were getting paid, like she could do at least that well, maybe even better, right?
Exactly. And I do truly wish that some employers would take a look at, especially military spouses. In my experience working with them, they're some of the hardest working people out there. And would you rather have a hardworking employee who shows up on time, who has a great work ethic, who is willing to be a team player? Or would you rather have somebody that you have for 20 years showing up, having, dissidents?
Right. Well, what you said earlier when we were getting ready to do this, in some ways that's another silver lining of COVID, right? Because people have become a lot more open to remote workers. And that's just been something that everybody had to get good at all at once. It was going to take a lot longer if it didn't happen this way. And so the fact that they do have to move from base to base, well, if they can get a virtual job and where they're able to work virtually, then it's not a problem.
Right.
That's pretty cool.
So one of my other friends is an accountant for H&R Block. We have an H&R Block on every post.
Oh, there you go.
They're helping. Cool. So she's been an accountant for them now for 20 years, but of course, never in the same location.
Right. Well, that's cool though that they can do that. That's awesome.
So there are opportunities available for professional jobs like that, and you can move. And of course, they understand because you're moving with your service person. But those aren't all the time. So when you do have an idea, I would say to the military spouse, don't be afraid to do a bunch of research. And you can pretty much find what you need on YouTube or the internet right now to get started. But if you have something that your heart passion, you want to try, don't be afraid to try it. And don't be afraid to reach out to a John or a Wendy, because we're teachers and we're eager to share. I'm eager to share my oops, don't do this.
Those are the most valuable things. Yeah.
As well as this really worked for me, but it took me 4 times.
Exactly.
But I got it. Those type of stories too. I think people sometimes will look at, my social media posts and and even some of my blogs and say, wow, that she's done really, really good. She's got it all together. Trust me, I don't. I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah. Well, you're bringing up something, and maybe this is a great note for us to close on, because I know we're getting near the end of our time. But this is something, so I'm going to give you three ways in on this, I think. One is what I heard from a guy named Les Brown, who's one of the most popular, like well-paid, highly requested speakers of all time. And he told me years ago, people don't connect with your successes. They connect with your messes. Your message is in your mess. And that's what I call insightful vulnerability.
Yes.
Right. So Wendy, what is one of those stories? Think about one of those times when you were just about as down as you've ever been and you thought it was all just done. And what was the lesson you learned out of that? Is it
shocking that it came right into the forefront of my brain as you were asking?
Nope, it's not. Because it's still a really important lesson, right, for you?
Well, and I might have a little trauma.
Yeah. Well, I don't mean to re-traumatize.
No. It's a funny trauma. Haha. So one of the things now it is. Yes. Yeah. So, one of the things I was super glad is that I did become fluent in German. And so I could speak German.
Right.
Pretty well. I mean, they would always ask me where my dialect was. And when I said Southern Alabama, they would just laugh.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's funny.
But we were on our way back from Keukenhof Gardens in Holland, where the Tulip Festival is every year. And I went to it every single year because I have a great friend, Kim, who lives there. And I was bringing a group with me, and I was driving a 9-passenger bus. And everything was going good. And then all of a sudden, in German, my car gave me an alarm that said, pull over, car about to explode. Because Germans don't mince words. They don't say, oh, your car's on fire, or they don't give you a little ding, ding, ding. It's just flashing red.
Pull over, your car's about to explode.
So luckily, about 3 kilometers down the road, there was a gas station, and I pulled over. And if you've lived in Europe, like you have for just a very hot second, that one of the things that you cannot have go wrong is anything with your vehicle on a Sunday afternoon, because everything is closed. And so the car started smoking and doing some really weird things. And of course, I have all my clients and passengers in the back, and we're wondering how to get home. Well, luckily, a policeman did come by and he helped us out. We were after about 12 hours of waiting, able to get towed. And he towed us to a garage, of course, that was closed. And we were out in the middle of nowhere with no reception. And I thought, these girls are going to give me a 1-star. I am never going to hear from them.
There go my good
my entire tour company is done.
Toast.
Is done. But, we figured out how to get 3 of them home via early Uber. Uber really hadn't existed yet. And we all talk about that trip and laugh about it today.
Yeah. So what do you think is what's the big secret? Because what I've noticed is that if I noticed at my company, Big Words, that the people that think when things went wrong, if we took care of them, they would become bigger advocates than if it had all just worked right. So what do you think you did? What were some of the things that you did that had that go that way?
Well, one of the things I think was that I remained calm.
People have mirror neurons. If you get upset, they get upset.
Yeah.
If you remain calm, much more likely they'll remain calm. Like if you'd been angry and upset about this, it would have probably gone another way.
I mean, my tagline is "It's always an adventure," and my Eagle team said that you have covered yourself so well. It's because I didn't say what kind of adventure it was going to be.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Just
This
that
is
it
the
always
Sunday
is.
afternoon adventure when everything's closed.
Right. But yeah, so I think that, and I do, as you can already hear, I tend to giggle when I'm nervous and you giggle. And so, they're like, okay, well, if she's giggling about this in the pitch black of Germany, then I guess we're going to be okay.
Yeah, that's so
but
funny.
we were able to, there's an emergency number that you can call and you don't have to pay for a taxi ride. We were able to get to a friend's house in Wiesbaden, not too far away. And I think
Wiesbaden is nice.
It's very nice. And we took the train home. And you know what? We all had a story about it. And that story connects us still.
Yeah,
and,
that's great.
We laugh about it. No one was hurt, thankfully.
Yeah. Yes.
And
the car did not explode.
No. And we found out it had been in a car accident that was unreported. So I was just super glad I wasn't pulled over by the police and charged with
right. Yeah.
and stuff. So the car company wasn't all that great, the rental car company to deal with afterward, but but my people didn't need to know all of that.
Right.
They just needed to get home and be safe. And we had a great tour other than this hiccup.
Yeah. Well, so good on you for making it always an adventure, and I really do think that's one of the big takeaways in life for me is, especially if you're the one running the tour or you're the one in charge or you're the leader or whatever, like if you can just laugh through it all and stay calm and, keep not get angry, there's just a much greater chance everybody's going to do that. But the minute that you get mad, right? I tell my speakers, if anything goes wrong, don't get upset, because if you get upset, they'll get upset. But if you just laugh it off and like, oh, well, boy, technology ain't what it used to be. Everybody will just laugh and let it roll off,
Well, and also I think so from that, I also learned having a plan B, having a backup.
Good.
Okay, if this happens along the route, how close am I to this and this? So I don't share that contingency on a trip. I just know that I have it. One of the other times that it came in place is we were in the Champagne region. And we had rain and we were supposed to be at a festival. And I called the bed and breakfast owner and she sent us to another festival that was inside.
Perfect.
But they didn't know that. They knew we weren't going to do the champagne tasting, but it turned out okay. So I did learn that from that. Okay, just have a backup plan, have a plan B. And sometimes I would just say, okay, plan B, here we go.
Yeah, that's very good. That's very good. Well, and that might be, I would say that is at least potentially something that I would expect from military spouses.
Yes, you got to be flexible.
Yeah, yes. Well, so Wendy, it was really wonderful to talk with you. And thanks. I feel like this is just uplifting and, I'm going away feeling better than I came in,
Good,
which I think is a great talent you have. So travelwithwendy.net. You can find all kinds of good stuff there. And hang in there.
Yes.
Hang in there and keep listening.
Not going to last forever. Just a season.
There you go. And, I'll look forward to, hearing how things continue to unfold. And as we get back to being able to travel, maybe freely. Wendy and I'll work something out and invite you to come join us.
Oh, that would be so good.
Yeah, that would be really fun. Okay. Well, if we do that, it started here and you heard it.
Yes, that's right.
So Wendy, thank you very, very, very much.
Welcome, John.
And,
anytime. It's great.
Cool. And for you listening, if you are interested in having an impact out in the world, I just want to remind you my why is to bring out what's awesome inside you so that you can have the impact you want to have in the world. And one of the things that is a new offering from Executive Speaking Success is the Speak Like a Leader Bootcamp experience. This is an 8-person cohort. We take 10 weeks to go through creating your TED-like talk. And if you want to find more about that, just go to ed.executivespeakingsuccess.com. Ed is for education. ed.executivespeakingsuccess.com/courses. And you'll see the latest offerings there. And if there's not a time that works for you, like if you can't make the one that's starting next, shoot us an email and we'll let you know. We'll get you on the list for when we open up new courses. So thank you very, very much for listening. Thanks for making a difference out there in the world. Wendy, thanks again for joining us.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you next time on speaklikealeader.show.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining the Speak Like a Leader podcast. Go be awesome.